Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand about transition is obviously the simpler the better. Why do you think that is?
The what's
With just with transitions in general,
what was the question?
why should we keep it simple?
Because if you're too busy, I think it would just look.
What?
If you're too bit like your transitions, if you're using like a whole bunch of transitions,
Uh-huh.
you have a clock light, and you have like this and that. I think it just looks screwy.
Yeah, it can distract the viewer, is what it comes down to. Yeah. Yeah, if you have a different transition for every cut, you have some continuity issues there, correct? And you're not going to be able to tell that story as well as you should. People are going to be focusing on the transition instead of the actual story. And so transitions are there to help your story move along and to keep it moving instead of distracting people from that. And so that being said, a cut and a dissolve are pretty much the only two transitions you really need, unless you're interested in using different transitions to kind of help your message move along, if that's the type of message that you want to tell. And so, but for the most part, a cut and a dissolve.
What about on-screen transitions, like actually filming something that is going to match up with the next people later on?
Yeah, like what do you mean?
We'll say, I don't know, for example, in the first clip, you could be at a beach, and then someone puts their hands over the camera, and then the second person has their hands on the camera, takes it off, and it could be at the snow.
Yeah, that would be a special transition, but that's basically you're fading to black, and then you're fading out from black, and you're at a different spot. And so it's still basically a dissolve, pretty much. And so when it comes to basics of it, that is you're cutting to black and then you're in a new spot. And so that brings up the next point that I'm going to mention here is that a cut, there's two different meanings between a cut and a dissolve. And so the cut is basically at the same time and same place. So it's whatever's happening in that section of time and that same place, you would use a cut. If you want to go to like a dream sequence, you'd use a dissolve. If you want to let people know that you're moving from a different through time and through a different place, you'd use a fade to black or a dissolve. And so those are the two meanings behind those transitions for the most part. Obviously, sometimes it's not how it works, but you have to know the rule before you can break the rule, is what it comes down to. And so anytime you see like a dream sequence or a montage, they're kind of dissolving in between to show that there's a large passage of time there and they're going to different places. Think of any Rocky montage there or anything like that. Or if they're in any movie when it changes from scene to scene, unless you're watching Inception, where they want to confuse the hell out of you. it's
I got
it's usually yeah.
I watched it recently again.
Yeah. Was he really in the dream? Was it his dream? Was he still in? Was he still
I
incepting?
even read up about it.
Yeah.
All the different theories on it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
Oh, there's some cool stuff.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool movie. I had Inception dreams after I watched it. I'm like, I'm dreaming in my dream. Oh. But anyway.
I had that. What pissed me off? I had that script I did before.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so those are the basic rules. Cuts, same time, same place. Dissolves, different time, different location. So when you're editing, think about that before you do that. So if you're going to do the hand over the camera, that's basically a dissolve. You're dipping to black, and then you're saying I'm moving to a different spot. Then you when it comes out, you're in the snow, for example. So that's different time, different location, and would be a use for a dissolve there.
I like we're doing a dream sequence, and so the part where he falls asleep,
Mm-hmm.
I did like a rack out, like
Yeah.
as he's falling asleep.
And then it's like it's a focal dissolve,
Yeah.
right? So it goes out of focus and comes back into focus. Maybe different color tone to let you know that you're in a different time.
Yeah.
Maybe even a dream sequence, maybe a fuzzy outline or something
Yeah,
along those
yeah.
lines.
And then like while we're shooting the dream sequence shots, I was also playing with focus a lot, learning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's look at some transitions here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark some ins and outs up here and bring some clips down.
Okay. So if I just say something like,
Okay, so first of all, we need to to get to a transition. I mean, obviously, you guys have worked with transitions before. You understand where they are. You guys have all are familiar with this. You just go to the Effects tab, and you can come down into your video transitions, and you can see that they have all sorts of stuff here. Obviously, like I said here, the cut, what we're going to watch here, is basically is a transition. You're basically cutting from one scene to another, same time, same place. If you come to the dissolves, you can see that you can actually you have all sorts of different dissolves here. The highlighted one means that's your default. If you want, you can actually just type in the search box for dissolve, and you'll notice that it will bring up exactly what you're looking for here. To apply it, you can basically just grab what you want and drag it into the timeline here. I'll go ahead and zoom in on that, and you can see that that is applied
with all the duct tape.
a cross dissolve onto that piece of footage there. I'll go ahead and undo that, or you can park the playhead, and you can move your playhead by pushing up and down on the keypad there, and you'll notice so it'll go from transition point to transition point. Another thing about that, if you're cutting through, if you have a B-roll on top of your footage, you have to make sure that that video track is selected as well, or else it won't actually go to the beginning of the clip. It'll go wherever, it'll only go to video one's cut points. So that's another thing to keep in mind there. If you want, you can just right-click on there and you can apply default transitions. And you notice it says, go ahead.
How do you set the default? How do you set that?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. And you'll notice when I right-clicked on that transition point, it says transitions. And so it's going to apply cross dissolve and an audio as well. I'll go ahead and undo that. Another key thing is that you'll notice that when I was bringing these clips down in, I marked an in and out, and I gave myself enough handle time up here, or I did enough pre-roll and enough post-roll so that my dissolves could actually happen. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. That's another crucial thing when working with transitions, is to make sure that you have enough pre-roll and post-roll. But we'll get into that. Another way to put a default video transition down, if whatever your default transition is set to, is you just press Command D, and make sure your playhead is parked on the transition point, and it'll show up. It'll just bring that in. So that would be yeah. I think it's Control in on Windows, I think. And so the minute you can figure out what your shortcuts are, that's a huge advantage that you have. Same works for audio transitions. I'll just go ahead and bring some audio in. Well, actually, it's pretty simple with audio transitions. I'll go ahead and do the same thing. If you'll notice, if I go to my auto transitions tab here, you'll notice that I've got nothing in there right now. Why do you think that is?
Because you have something in your search box.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So be careful. If you've typed something into your search box, be careful not to, don't freak out if you can't find something. Just go ahead and clear that out.
So also toggle stuff off with the 32, those little bar batteries with the night ones.
Yeah.
Click one of those, will lose all sorts of.
Yeah, because it depends on what each of these things have on their effects there. So if you click that off, it won't search for that in particular. And so be careful when you're searching for things, or just trying to look for something, you have something typed in there. Just clear that out before you want to find anything. You'll notice that the audio transition, we have a crossfade. We have different things there. Like I say, you can drag and drop that, and you'll, let me just zoom in on this here. Let me just delete that here. So if I drag this constant power over onto my audio, you'll see that I have I'll have that right there. And then when
with all the duct tape.
doesn't really do much because it just brings, I didn't have much sound on the previous clip. But that's one way to do it. Or if you want to, you can apply the default transitions again on that. Or you can just press Shift Command D if you're on a Mac, and I think Shift Control D on Windows, and that'll just bring an audio fade in there. And the advantage of that is if you're cutting music together, if you have to fit a piece of music to a certain time and the music is longer, you need to cut that up. You need to do some basic editing of that music, and putting a crossfade on there while you're editing the beats is a great way to transition music into it there.
So you're saying Shift Control D is a crossfade?
It's a crossfade for audio,
For audio.
for only audio, and Command Command D or Control D for Windows is for video only. Does that make sense? So if you just want to put certain transitions on certain things, let's say you don't need to use audio transitions.
So it'll do the default. So Shift with Shift is default for audio.
Yep.
Without Shift is default.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Any questions on applying transitions, shortcuts to transitions, anything along those lines there? Yep, we'll get there. So speaking of nuances of transitions, let's do a few things here with this. I'm going to go ahead and change this in point. I'll just use this whole clip here. I'll drag this over here, and then I'll find another clip that I'm going to use. I'll use the entire clip of this as well, and I'll butt these up together. And you'll notice, if you'll notice on these, I'll go ahead and move over to this guy right here and zoom in on this. You'll notice that I have, it's a clean, if you have enough handles, there won't be any like triangles or anything along the lines on the clip. If I go to this piece here, you'll see that I have little triangles on each of the ends of those clips. That's signifying to me that I have no pre-roll or post-roll on that clip. And if I try to, I'll just go ahead and put a video transition on here by pressing Command D. If I try to do that, it says insufficient media. This transition will contain repeated frames. So let's go ahead and press OK on that. And you'll notice that when it puts the transition there, but you'll notice that it has these lines through it. And so when we watch this transition, you'll notice that it basically creates still frame, a freeze frame of that in the fade there. So if I'll go ahead and make this a little bit longer so we can understand, so we can get a good look at what this really means here.
I just say something like,
See how that the canoe was frozen right there. So it's important for you guys to have handles on that. Let's do another quick thing here. I'll go ahead and get rid of this guy here, and then I'll give it sufficient media on the front. I'll change my in so I have enough media on the front of that, and you'll notice that when I bring this down, I have a triangle only on this last piece here. And if I try to apply a transition there, that signifies I don't have enough handles on this first piece, and I have plenty here. And so if I press Command D there, it puts the crossfade only on the media that is left on this clip. So it'll work,
what if I just say something like,
but it only cross dissolve through that first clip, and it won't actually do it on the cut there. And there's a few ways that you can actually kind of fix this. But before we move on, just do yourself a favor and shoot enough pre-roll and post-roll and mark ins and outs so you have enough media content to make proper dissolves or transitions. And so that is the huge key there. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that. You just use the whole clip. Make sure you trim it up and make sure that you have enough pre-roll and post-roll to do that. But if you don't, there's ways that you can work around it. And or if you forget to mark ins and outs, there's ways to work around it. And so let's say we want to kind of fix this guy here. We can actually click on this transition and open it up in the source. And you'll see that we have, I'm going to go ahead and move that over here. You see that you can actually do some editing up here in this movie. So we have plenty of footage on this 1969 piece, but not a lot on this 1973 piece. And so a quick way to fix that would be to open this piece up in your source and actually change your out here and give that enough. Oh, what did they do in the video? I just watched that. Let's do it like this. Let's grab the hand tool. What is it? Slip, 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 slip. Let's do that here. And let's bring this, oops. Let's do some work here. Let's try this again here. I will put a quick dissolve on here, Command D. And then I can actually, so I'll use the slip tool. I can grab, to do that, you can have it on your selection tool if you just press Option, and you can grab this and you can move this right here, and it'll change. And then you can open up this cross dissolve, and now you have enough. You have enough footage. You can actually move this over here, or put that right on the edit there. Does that make sense to you guys? What's that? Yeah, Alt for Windows, and you can actually move that around and slightly move that to how you want that to work. But like I say, the easiest way is just to give yourself pre-roll and post-roll, so you're not worrying about those types of edits there. Let's see here. Modifying transitions. Do you guys have any questions on handles and the nuances of that? Like I say, the key thing is just make sure you give yourself proper ins and outs, and so that you have enough to work with in case you do need to, if you need to make a transition there. If you're just using cuts, not so much, but if you have to use a dissolve or any type of other transition, you're going to want pre-roll and post-roll. Mark your ins and outs properly. Any questions? Okay, so let's move into modifying these transitions. You can actually, let's say we have a transition here. We can, like I say, we can open this up in the source. You can do all this. You can modify the transition right here on the timeline. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the timeline, and I'm going to open this up here as well. So if I just grab the end of the dissolve, and you can actually trim it by just moving it back and forth like that, and you can change the time length of that, and you notice it changes up here as well. You can also grab it up here and do the same thing here, and we only have that much left on that movie. And you can move it around wherever you want up here. You can move your clips around and give yourself more stuff to work with up there. And so you can actually modify it right there, or you can change the duration of your transition right here. And you need to know what frame rate you're working in. If you're shooting in 30 frames per second and you want it to be a second transition, you just type 30, and then that changes it to 1 second. If you're working in 24, you need to remember that. If you want a half a second, you need to type in, and you're working in 30 frames, you need to do 15 frames, and then it'll change that as well. You can also swap out a transition pretty easily. Any questions on working on moving the transition and just kind of adjusting it, just one transition here?
The duration would be for the entire transition.
Yes. Yep. So it'd be a 15 frame transition, so half a second transition, so it'd be pretty quick. If you want to swap out a transition, let's say you want to change that cross dissolve to something else, you can come into here and let's do a page peel. And we'll do this guy right here. You can just drop that right where that was, and it just swaps out pretty easily. And so you can kind of see what that does. And you can actually open this page peel up, and you can show the actual sources here. You can reverse the page peel, and so it comes from the other side. And you can do all sorts of stuff with that. So you can actually change, you can customize different wipes and different transitions there.
The Iris has a tool where you can actually direct where you want the Iris to open up.
Let's do that.
Like with that montage I did, I wanted when I was
Is the
sucking.
iris round?
Yeah. Like when I was doing the straw to suck the blood from I wanted the hole to go up the straw, so I had to line it up.
Okay, so you can actually do some show actual sources, border color. You can actually give it
Like double click on the top on the program.
where it's in this.
Up on the right. Up the right. Yeah, double click on that. And there's a little circle in the middle. You can move that around.
Gotcha.
Oh, why didn't it like,
Because it needs you probably have to do that in the actual effect itself. You probably have to select this effect or something along those lines.
oh yeah, there. See the little region guide in the bottom.
Yeah.
So now you can move that around. And change the actual iris opens up.
Cool. And you can reverse it so it looks like it's sucking up your nose. You can give it a border. You can give it a border color. We'll give it black. Yeah, and you can change that to about whatever you want there. And then you can reverse it, and it makes it look like you're sucking cocaine up your nose. Or something along those lines.
Or whatever.
Yeah, so you can do a lot of different things there depending on what transition you want. It's really easy to do some stuff there. If you want to change settings on your, let's say you've got a rough cut and you need to start applying transitions to everything, and you know that you're going to be putting a 13 frame fade on pretty much everything, or that's going to be the first thing. That's the first thing that you're going to go through. You can actually go in and change up in your general preferences, and this can be really handy. And so if you just come up into Premiere Pro and go to your preferences, and yours it's under Edit, and you go to Edit, and you just go to General. You can actually come into the General Preferences, and you can change your audio transition default to whatever you want, your video transition default. Let's say we wanted that to be exactly 22 frame transition, and for video transitions there, that you can just change that exactly how you want. And let's say you need to apply 22 frame transitions on a lot of cuts, and so you just change that, and then you can come in here and you can come on here and press Command D, and then you have a 22. If we open this up, we have a 22 frame transition. And if we can, basically you come into you could come and apply those wherever you needed to real quickly. And then you could come back and go, okay, now I need wipes that I need to throw on there, and they need to be 14 frame transitions, whatever it is. The other cool thing, I'm going to go ahead and undo a few things here. With that being said, you can select multiple clips, and let's say you need to put a bunch of transitions on everything. Let's say you're building a slideshow and you need to put crossfades on every ounce of slideshow that you need to put there. So if I go ahead and select all these clips here, and I come up into sequence, and I can apply video transition to selection, or apply default transitions to selection, I can come in, and that basically applied, you can come in and we can look at all these. That applied transitions to pretty much every cut that you had selected there. And so that's a huge, huge bonus there. Yeah, with the default transition. Let's go ahead and look at that. Let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and undo that, and I'll do the same thing. Apply video transition. Nope, you have to do the apply default transitions to selection. So you have to, if you know you're going to be doing that to all of them, it's going to apply the audio and the video transition as well. So.
You know what the difference is between that and the add edit to all tracks?
I don't know what that does. I'd have to do some research on that. But with that said, you can do a lot of stuff with that. But let's say you want to change your default transition. Let's say you don't want to cross dissolve there. Let's say you want to go in and change this iris round to your default transition. It's pretty easy. You just come into your effects tab, find what you want. You can right click on it and just set the selected transition as your default. And now that's the iris round is now my default transition. So if I come in here, if I come into my timeline and start selecting on this, I do a Command D, that's an iris round transition on that now.
With all the duct tape and everything. And then secondly,
Yeah. So you can do there's a lot of things with transitions that you can work with, tinker around with it, play with it. If you have any questions, let me know. But that's pretty much the lecture on transitions here. Do you guys have any questions?